I am not okay. I'm Joe Tilley. My colleagues and I will be exploring some of the many questions surrounding mental wellness and the stigma surrounding mental health as well, particularly how it pertains to men. The question we're going to pose today is, how do I know I'm not okay? Alongside Michael Landsberg and Christink. You may know Michael. He's a longtime face of TSN and on the anchor desk. He hosted the long-running show Off the Record, and he's now host of First Up, the morning show on TSN 1050 radio. He is also the founder of hashtag Sick Not Weak. Michael, nice to see you, my friend. As well as Kim Christink. Kim is the executive director and founder of Bayridge Community Centers. He's a clinical psychotherapist. Kim has hosted the long-running nighttime program Nightlight, a call-in show. He's also appeared on many national television programs. Welcome as well, Kim. Good to see you here.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, so we're posing the question today, how do I know I'm not okay? And Michael, let's start with you. How did you come to the conclusion that you might not be okay?
Yeah, it's funny how that is such an appropriate question, because sometimes you don't know. And what I have learned, and what I learned from myself 20 years ago, was that it can happen so slowly that you don't feel yourself becoming not okay. And for me, it was a moment where I turned down a chance to do something that I would never have turned down. And I thought, wow. Why did I do that? Why did I say no? And then I started to think about the previous 6 months of my life and all the things that I had rejected and all the weird things that had become so normal to me, but were abnormal. And I realized I'm not myself. I've become somebody else. I don't like this person, and I don't want to be this person. So the question, are you okay? Am I okay? Sometimes is really difficult to answer. And I have an idea. I'll let Kim jump in. Well, not that I really have any say. I mean, I guess I could keep talking forever and then we could wrap up the show. But I have a way that I measure, am I okay? And I'll get to that in a sec.
All right, Kim, let's talk about the symptoms. How do we know if we're not okay? How do I know?
Well, it's a great question. I think the assumption is that you know when you're okay. And so that's an important thing. And a lot of us, especially depending on our age, we have a sense on which we're at our best. And we have that phrase, the best person or our best selves. But when I think when we know we're not okay, and I totally agree with Michael that it's something that slips in so quietly. We lose ourselves hardly ever abruptly. We lose a sense of ourselves so seamlessly and gradually, and probably we're going to say just from this innocuous sense of being stressed. And but I think one of the things that we will be able to tell that we're not okay is our energy levels will have dropped significantly, and we're using our energy just to get by. And I think that's one of the critical things, that we begin to just go through the motions because all the energy is there. There's not a lot of margins left for all the other things that we would normally enjoy. And I think that's one of the key things from my perspective, is the things that we used to enjoy, it seems to be slipping away as we just focus on keeping up, and we're kind of treading water, I think. What do you think, Joe?
Well, that makes sense. It explains why Michael, would lose interest in a project that he would normally be really excited about and not be there at all. I'm thinking of what about what other signs are there besides the drop off in enthusiasm, shall we say? What other mood swings or what other signs are there?
Well, first of all, let me jump in and say, Joe, now it's your obligation to use air quotes, because I did and so did Kim. And now if you're going to be part of the air quote team, you're really going to have to commit to it. But I have found that the single biggest thing for me, without a doubt, when I have experienced severe anxiety and or severe depression is the loss of the ability to experience joy. And when people say, how do I know if I'm just struggling, say, with the pandemic? I mean, who's going to say, hey, if you're anxious or if you're kind of down about our situation in life right now, who would ever say, well, that's you must be mentally ill. That's just normal. So what I ask people is, okay, what's something that brings you basic joy? And does it still bring you basic joy? For me, it's a sip of a cup of coffee in the morning. I take a sip of a cup of coffee and I go, oh, it brought me like a little bit of joy. It's not like I'm going, oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. It just brings me a little bit of what makes us human beings, what makes it worthwhile for us to get out of bed. And if the answer is, when you ask yourself about your basic joy, if the question is, when was the last time you felt it? And if the answer is 6 months ago or a year ago, or I can't remember, that pretty well tells you you're not okay.
Well, that's a great point, Michael, in the sense of tied in with that in your coffee illustration is gratitude. Gratitude goes very quickly, or when we become even present with ourselves to even say, how am I doing? Or to allow ourselves to feel that there's something that positive that comes to the surface. But when we are not doing okay, when we're stressed, when we're struggling with anxiety or depression or just mood, negative thoughts and feelings are going to come to the surface and take over our screen, as it were, and occupy it and allow it to, I guess, just take our whole screen and our vision away. And being grateful and certainly experiencing joy is one of the things that drop off real fast.
How can I get to a place where, I wake up some mornings and I'm not really okay. I feel like I'm there's, like you said, that screen's full. Seems to be a lot going on. Personally, I like to plug into a meditation. I do a Muji meditation. I like his voice and like the quietness, the not a lot of thinking going on, just a chance to relax. And I find that's a really effective way for me to sort of clear the slate and sort of change my thinking. Any other thoughts?
I think that you have to be, not you, one has to be, and this is especially for men, is one of the biggest challenges. And that is, can you be honest with yourself? Because a lot of us live in denial, right? We don't want to be mentally ill. I mean, no one wants to be ill, but I interviewed a quarterback for the BC Lions about 10 months ago, and he was telling me about a panic attack that he had, and he thought he was having a heart attack. And as his wife was taking him to the hospital, he said, all I could think about was, please don't let it be a mental illness. Let it be a heart disease or something like that. And I said to him, really, you would prefer that? He said, absolutely. I'm a professional athlete. I'm surrounded by men who ultimately will scoff at you for showing weakness. So I think at the core of us as men in battling to get a diagnosis is the battle to be honest with ourselves.
I like what you're saying.
Go ahead, Kim. Sorry.
Well, I think we can talk about how we have been raised as boys and men to actually have a certain status or the virtues that we are pointed in order to achieve manhood is certainly never to admit weakness, to certainly be autonomous and never ask for help, and to be stoic and be self-reliant. And so right from the get-go, we are taught, just like we are taught to read, to write, we are taught to be strong and to not show any weakness at all. And I think that is a real key thing and so systemically, from the culture, the way we were raised, that whole message of what it is to be a man. So when we're talking about, are you okay? Well, if you're saying, am I okay as a man? We automatically understand that the tickets to become a man, or the the little check marks, or if you want to say scars from the movie of Jaws, you want to see a scar? This is a scar. It
Yeah.
means I have been autonomous. I have been self-reliant. I'm a lone wolf, and I do it alone.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Robert Shaw, who was in that movie, who was showing the scars, that he ad-libbed that whole scene. It's like one of the he was talking about the Indianapolis, and I'm not off topic here because, hey, there is no topic here except what makes you feel okay. Jaws was an amazing movie. Robert Shaw did this amazing ad-lib talking about the sinking of the Indianapolis and being in water with the sharks, and tying that back to what we're talking about, because I better do it because clearly I've taken this to a place that it's not supposed to go. I would say that the reason why we started a charity called Sick Not Weak is to give anyone, but in particular men, the opportunity to say, hey, you know what, I'm not okay. Hey, you know what, I need to see a doctor, or I'm seeing a doctor, or I'm on medication. Men will never show weakness. And therefore, the key is not to encourage them to show weakness. The key is to encourage them to believe that mental illness is not a weakness, but a sickness. And no one hesitates to talk about a sickness. Men will talk about, physical ailments that they have. So I think right at the core is the idea that the perception is it's a weakness, and I don't want to be seen as weak.
Well, I don't want to admit it, right? And when I was, for me to admit that I was flawed to other people was kind of, to me, it was almost like I was admitting at my very core that I was flawed as a human being. To admit that I was not, a real human or whatever it was. I just felt so, afraid to let people know who I was, because I was trying to always hide who I was. But and then what happened is my addiction took me to a place where I had to do something about that, and I had to face who I was and change who I was and start working on changing who I was, or I was going to die, is what it boiled down to. And I was one of the, when we're looking for signs of how I might, know that I'm not okay. For me, for example, some of the signs came from other people. The signs came from other people because I wasn't really willing to look at myself and do and to take an honest look at myself. I wasn't either willing or able to do that. But other people started to tell me, you got a problem. My wife left, so we owe the house. You got a problem. The job that I've got, the problem is that I'm drinking too much, right? I'm drinking too much and I can't stop. And that's what the problem is. And so, and so finally, after with the job hanging by a thread and me living in my friend's 1-bedroom basement apartment, I have to look at myself and say, you know what, there might be a problem here. And then I'm willing to do something about it, at least explore the possibility of doing something about it. But, in my case, other people saw that I had a problem before I was either willing or able to see it.
Well, I think that's a great point in that it's there. Whenever we think about men, they do play team sports, and whether it's actually in the sports or if it's frontline with the police officers or the military or fire department, there's a sense in which they trust each other to have each other's back, but that usually is defined physically. If someone was going to be hurt or someone was going to attack them, they would have each other's back. But it seems with emotional and mental health or other issues from addictions, etc., we don't have each other's back, and we usually end up depending on some friends, but often our partners, often our women, who can see these things way sooner than we do. And thank goodness for some of these women that put up with us when we refuse to see what's going on.
Yeah, I just think that we as a society, as a world, as a culture need to change the way we perceive mental illness. it has to be seen in the same category as cancer or diabetes or heart disease or lupus or anything else. It has to be seen that way, because when you don't see it that way, all of a sudden now you're saying, okay, well, it's different than those physical illnesses. And if it's different than those physical illnesses, the belief that many people have, in particular men, but many people have the idea that somehow it's self-inflicted, that somehow we are to blame for our own illnesses. And people don't attach blame to themselves when it comes to the other illnesses that I was just talking about. When it comes to mental illness, there's the feeling, is this self-inflicted? Did I bring this upon myself? And am I vulnerable because I'm weak? And we need to change the way we view an illness like depression or anxiety or addiction. We need to see it in the same category that we see other illnesses.
Well, this old idea, like, we should pull up our bootstraps, as they say, right? And this idea that somehow, you're supposed to fix yourself when it comes to mental health. And I've heard it said, like, how can I fix this broken brain by using the same brain that created the sickness to fix it, right? I need to seek outside help. Like for me, for example, isolation is obviously another one of the signs of that I might be having a problem if I'm trying to isolate. Now, isolating from my old drinking buddies is probably a good idea, but it's good for me to have a community, right? It's good for me to have a recovery community. Is that one of the things that you stress? And by the way, I think I referred to it as Bayridge community. It's Bayridge Counselling Centers, not Bayridge Community. So I just want to apologize for that, Kim. So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think both of you are tying in this thing of what I would call just stinking thinking. In other words, our thoughts about men and that somehow an illness is a weakness, and the isolation aspect is something that we need to revisit. We need to get the message out. We need to talk to our certainly our young people and men about. We need to start talking about what you are experiencing internally, and helping each other. But I love your point, Joe, about with the same brain that we have to fix it that caused the problem. And but there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame that's wrapped around mental health. There's a lot of shame that's wrapped around if this doesn't make me a man. Certainly, there's some studies that would show that that there's sometimes more shame around men experiencing mental health issues than women, simply because some of that stinking thinking is that it's illness equals weakness, or that somehow I have lost my identity as a strong person. As you say, what's wrong with me? I must be a broken human. You can't touch those kind of things at our core of our person without really kind of unanchoring ourselves. And so we have to change the way we think about it. Our world has changed significantly. We're still thinking back 100 and 200 years ago, when the roles of men and women were really clearly defined, and one was out there protecting and being the strong person, and women have been forced to be in a very proactive way to take on and saying, no, I can do what a man does, etc. And we somehow are a little slower on the uptake to understand that some of the ways women have done so well is that they've learned to navigate and trust their emotions and their feelings, and we have not developed those skills.
Why don't we ask for help? Why don't we ask for help?
I think we don't ask for help because we don't acknowledge that we need help. I mean, we've all had discussions with people that we care about saying, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Are you sure you're okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I don't think you're okay. I mean, there is this knee-jerk reaction that a lot of men have that says, I'm fine. And if they acknowledge the fact that they're not fine internally, they still have to take this massive leap of going and telling someone about it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've tried my hardest to convince someone to take one single step where I'll say, hey, you have been suffering for a year or 2 years or 5 years. And some people have been like not okay for a decade. And, I'll say, you got to do something about that. And it starts with maybe just making an appointment with your family doctor. That's it. Pick up the phone and make an appointment. And that task in itself is next to impossible for a lot of men to do. They're just not equipped to acknowledge I'm sick and then to take the steps needed because they'll always minimize. Go to the doctor. The doctor says, so what's wrong? I'm actually not too bad. Well, what the hell are you talking about? You are bad. You've really given up your life to your mental illness, whether it's addiction or anxiety or depression. So I think men are programmed, first of all, to live in denial. And if they do acknowledge that they're in pain, they don't want to talk about it with anyone. They'd rather just keep it inside.
Can you talk about that denial more? Talk about that denial more, because when you said that, where I went to, on the basketball court in high school, where you would hear the message "suck it up" or "walk it off." You would be injured, but you're told to push through. Can you talk more about what men experience with denial?
Yeah, I think that, the idea of denying it, first of all, is sometimes we deny it because we just genuinely don't know. It's like I said before, it happens so slowly sometimes that we don't know. But if you do come to the conclusion where you go, yeah, you know what, I am in pain, I am really not living the life that I want to live, the life that I possibly could live. But we deny ourselves the help because we're not programmed for that, because asking for help typically means admitting failure. Like you said, suck it up. That's what a coach would say to a basketball player, suck it up. But that doesn't work if you try to suck up this unseen, unprovable illness, right? Which is what mental illness is. I can't prove it to you, right? And I think at the core of what's wrong with men is we need an x-ray. We need a biopsy. We need a blood test. We need something to be able to say, hey, take a look here. Because if we could prove it, we would stop denying it and we would stop being ashamed. If I could show you, my lab results and you look at them and went, wow, that is bad depression numbers, then all of a sudden now everything changes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kim.
I was going to ask you, Joe, with your addictions, denial was very much part of it. How powerful is denial, what we're talking about?
Well, so, I don't want to believe that I can't do this, because there were times early in my life when I was able to stop for periods of time and seem to be able to control it. So I believe that sooner or later I was going to be able to control it. I just had to try a little bit harder. So then I would quit, and on the way home, I couldn't not go to the bar, right? And it's like the denial was, my mind was telling me I'm just changing my mind. I'm deciding I'm just gonna have a couple of beers and and that's it. I'm gonna, that's all. But what happens is that denial is so strong that it's like the liar lives inside my head and continues to lie to me and tell me that I don't have this disease, right? And so therefore I'm going to get a hold of it sooner or later. When I really, 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 really want to quit, then I'm going to be able to quit. And then I quit. The next day I'd quit, and I couldn't make it home that night. And again, it's, well, you didn't want to quit that bad because you change your mind so easily, and so the denial is like it's very cunning, baffling, and powerful. It's very subtle. It works. Without me being aware, it just continues to lie, and it won't let me see the truth. But the thing is once I do see the truth, and once I admit that I got a problem, and once I'm willing to change, I'm willing to ask for help. And when I reach out to ask for help, I feel so much better as a result of that. And then, having been sober for a considerable amount of time, I can also now help others. And it's in the helping others where I really get to feel good, like, and it's that opportunity to carry a positive message to somebody that puts me in a place where I really feel good about who I am, and to a point where I feel better about who I am today than I've ever felt before, because of my ability to be helpful. And so that's something, I learned as a process. It's like, I need to ask for help. I need to reach out for help, because I can't do it on my own. As I mentioned before, I've got this brain that it's a sick mind that is going to continue to keep me sick. So unless I get out of this sick mind and do something else, try something new, I'm for me, it's important for me to have spiritual health, emotional health, physical health. I walk every day. I pray, meditate every day. I connect with other people, and that's very helpful for me. And I think I need to do that. But that's a learned behavior that I learned from other people, from being in recovery community, and that's what and so, and I hate. It's too bad about that stigma, because I think the more I know about myself, the less afraid I am of you learning who I am, because that's what it boils down to. It's like, I don't want you to know who I am. I'm too afraid for you to know who I am. I can't tell you who I am, because if I tell you who I am, then you're going to reject me. And of course, that's what it boils down to. It's my fear of abandonment, that the world's going to reject me. I won't be good enough. And therefore, I'm not, yeah. So.
Wow. And so really saying is, as men, but certainly women as well, we're really afraid. It's fear that keeps us from asking for help. And I think one of the things both of you guys have said really well is that we just need to say, I need help, and ask for help. But men generally suck at that. We suck at asking for help. We don't even know how to do that well. We have sometimes been shamed. We've sometimes seen people manipulate people by asking for help or trying. We hate to ever be dependent on someone or cause them any burden. And we have all kinds of thinking around asking for help. And we don't really understand, as Michael has said, we just need to tell someone I'm struggling, or phone somebody and say it simply and clearly, straight out. But we aren't even confident in knowing how to even ask the question or make the statement.
I speak to people every day about this, and I encourage them to share and to find one person to share with, because sharing is kind of an acquired skill, right? Like every time you share, it gets a little bit easier. The first time, incredible fear. Oh my gosh, how am I going to be perceived? What am I going to sound like? And eventually, you get good at it. And I mean, Joe, like, I'm sure if you think back to, when you first started to realize that you actually did have a problem and that you weren't in total control, I'm sure if someone would have said, hey, you're going to be doing a show talking about your addiction and talking about, your ups and downs and your challenges, you would have thought, not a chance in the world. And yet almost every person that I speak to will say afterwards, the best thing I ever did was to begin the sharing process. The best thing I ever did was liberate myself from this secret that I was carrying. Because when you carry a secret, you carry with you shame, right? Because why do you have that as a secret? And the answer is because you're ashamed. So am I right that you would never have believed that you'd be in a position to do what you're doing today?
100%, because I created this facade of what I wanted people to believe that I was, and of course that didn't fit with being honest, right? Because I was a liar, right? That's what I did. I lied all the time. I had to lie to continue on doing what I was doing, and it just became a habit for me. So to be honest and to chip away that facade and let people see me as I really am, it was a scary idea, because again, I was so afraid of everybody leaving me, everybody not wanting anything to do with me, because I guess at the core, what I really truly believed is I wasn't enough, right? I wasn't enough for you to want to be with me, right? to stay with me. So I had to create this fictitious image of myself, and that way, perhaps you would think I was good enough, right? So now I'm going to chip away at that. I'm going to chip, get down to the real, Michael statue of David, right? And get down to what that person that exists inside that facade. And you know what? And then once I get there, I realize, I kind of like who I am. It's kind of okay to be me. And after a while, I like being me. But that's a process, right? And it had just to start with just learning how to be honest and getting honest. And again, it's so important. I want to ask you, Kim, though, if somebody is wondering, you know, whether they're okay, probably, I guess my point is, I think if I'm wondering that whether I'm okay or not, I probably have a problem. Is that fair to say?
Certainly needs to be investigated because it's nagging. It's something's triggering, and we need to be listening to that. And it certainly is saying that I haven't investigated that area. I've been quiet, as you have said so beautifully, Joe, in the sense that I've explored some of those areas, and I've learned to actually like myself. And as Michael said, I no longer am afraid in life. I'm more confident, etc., because I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to try to keep secret. And so an unexplored life is really a life that's not really explored and lived. And so I think that I think we all need to take the time to say what's going on inside me, what makes me tick, why do I do this? Am I doing this because my dad did this, my mother did this, or because of some trauma, or because I'm afraid? Those aren't good reasons to live, and it doesn't produce a lot of joy. Can I just go back to both of you gentlemen, because I have the greatest respect for your stories, but do you think you're more of a man than you were when you were younger men?
I would say, without a doubt, I feel like, pre-pandemic, when I used to go around giving, I don't know, 1 or 2 speeches a week, and I'd be in front of an audience of, 100 or 500 or 1,000 people. At Wembley Stadium, I played to 80,000 people, but, I don't like to talk about that much. But I would find myself standing in front of these people, and I would say, you all have not you all, but many of you have a problem in perceiving yourself and your own illness, and you see it as a weakness. But I would ask all of you, who's the one person in this room that is mentally strong? And everyone would say me, because first of all, I'm the only one talking in the room. But they would look and say, oh my gosh, like I hear you speaking about depression and medication and your struggles and suicidal ideation, Michael, and you're not ashamed or embarrassed, you're strong. And I say to people, well, why won't you give yourself the same benefit of the doubt? If I sound strong, and now I'm talking directly to someone who's watching right now, if you think I can't share my battle, whatever it is, because I'm afraid to be seen as weak, then you think back to looking at me. I mean, you could have watched me on TV and thought, that guy's a jackass. He's arrogant, and, he thinks he knows it all, and he's always arguing. I don't care about that. But no one's going to say that I'm weak. And people should give themselves the same benefit of the doubt. I'm not weak. And so I loved your question, actually. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. But yeah, freaking right I am. I'm strong.
I think you came on right after the Stones, didn't you, Michael, at Wembley?
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. They were the opening act, and then people started joining me, and Mick got all pissed off, and I just the Wembley story. It's can't miss.
Yeah. Ronnie Wood and I talked about recovery. It was great. So anyway, there's no question I'm a better man today than I was before when I was trying to hide my addiction, when I was trying to hide who I was. So yeah, there's no doubt about it. But as I mentioned earlier, like before recovery, I would have never gone there. I just would have never gone there. I just would have never thought about opening myself up and letting people know who I really was, because I was so afraid of the consequences of that. And in fact, the consequences of letting, my true self be out there is that I get to be free. I get to be free.
Wow.
I don't have to, pretend I'm something I'm not, right?
Hey, Kim, let me
Wow.
ask you this. I was listening to Joe talk about his addiction, and we know that AA, whether you're AA or not, we know that it's incredibly effective and incredibly powerful. And I think it works across the board for people with mental health challenges, because if you're in a room with people that you feel understand you, then everything becomes easier. And when you hear other people tell their story and you think, well, that's actually very similar to my story, and I'm listening to that person and I realize they're not weak, they just have this sickness. If we could all get in a room, because my particular issue is depression, right? If I could get in a room with people, and especially with men, but it doesn't really matter, and we were all sort of gathered around and I said, I'm going to start by telling you my story, and then if you feel like jumping in, you tell your story. I think we would get so many people that would come out of the closet, so to speak, who would say, yeah, I can say it because I feel like I'm understood. And the feeling of being understood, Kim, is hugely powerful for somebody like me.
Oh, I agree, and I think trying to have those safe places with safe people, especially for men, to be able to be free. We're we're really talking, as Joe says, about being free to be ourselves, to be our authentic self, not an image, not some kind of hero, not assigned to a role, not even clinging on to. I laugh at myself. I thought about how I used to argue with my wife about not throwing out my old football jerseys, because that represented my manhood, my young manhood, and but to be able to, yeah, if we can be together, if we can be in a place where we can talk and just tell our stories, I think it would be incredible. It would be really an incredible thing. And I think the movement of saying we are going to move the pillars of this toxic masculinity and push them aside in a way, and admit that it is human to have fear. It's a bad toxic sense of maleness to not admit it. But if we want to conquer fear, we face it. And as you said, we talk about it, we say it, and we run right through it. We don't pretend it's not there.
That's what courage is. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and facing it. And it takes a while, it's hard to do in the beginning when you first come to terms with, when I first come to terms with who I really am. And I've got a lot of fear. I've got a lot of fear of people finding out who I am. I've got a lot of fear about what if I'm now rejected and all that other stuff. But once I start to just, get honest and tell people who I really am, I realize after a period of time that I'm getting a lot of strength from this. I'm getting courage. I'm getting that fear is dissipating, and it's like I've never felt this courageous in my life before, right? I mean, I was an amateur boxer and I would have to get into the ring, and climbing through those ropes took a little bit of courage, but it's nothing to the courage that I've had to face as a result of working on myself and to overcome my addiction, right? So.
Courage is contagious as well. Like you said what you just said. And, I can see someone listening to that going, okay, well, yeah, me too. And, I'm going to, I'm going to share because I heard Joe share, and Joe's courage is actually leaping from him onto me. I mean, the idea of sharing is incredibly powerful, right? Just the idea that you could hear someone speak about what you have inside your head. That's the way I try to approach it with depression, right? I can tell people who have depression, like I have depression, not situational sadness, but real sort of organic, there's something wrong with my brain depression that I can't talk myself out of. It's just there. And if I think that if you appreciate that, you find that people will look and hear what I got to say on that and go, hey, me too. So I think that so much of what we need to do is we need to tell our stories. And, I found that out one day on Off the Record, right? It's Stefan Richer, 2009. I'd never spoken about depression before that. And I knew that he had suffered from depression in the 1990s. So I thought, hey, I'm going to ask him how he's doing. And that changed my life, changed the entire direction of my life, because the next day I started getting messages from men. And, I'm used to getting messages which essentially were, hey, you suck, Landsberg, that kind of thing. But these were so powerful. I heard you and Stefan Richer talking about mental illness, and because of that, I'm going to tell you that I too have suffered, and you're the first person I've ever told it to. So, I think what we're doing here needs to be magnified and needs to be done in all kinds of different settings. Sharing is contagious. The story that you share, Joe, is going to give somebody else courage because they heard you say it.
Well, there's a question, can we be okay again? And I think the question is answered by the fact that, when I look at it, like, I don't know if I was ever okay. I dealt with life the way I dealt with life. I don't know if I was ever okay, but I feel like today I'm okay most of the time, right? So you can be okay again. Michael, I'm going to ask you, do you feel like you're more okay now than you were before ever? Or would you say that we're okay, then we're okay, and now you're again?
Well, when I was a kid, my earliest memory would be one of experiencing anxiety, having fears that other kids didn't have. And that limited my world, was a lot smaller than a lot of other kids, because the things that they were doing, I wouldn't do because of these anxieties that I had. And I had no idea that I had a diagnosable illness. I'd never heard of general anxiety disorder. So I, without a doubt, have battled anxieties all my life. Without a doubt now, because I've been treated for anxiety and depression, that I feel better now than I have at different times in my life, without a doubt. And I certainly feel stronger now. So I don't know if that's the answer. I'm not perfect. And I think it's important, you're talking about the battles that you've been through. It's important not to minimize. We sell hope. We don't sell false hope. False hope is, hey, if you show up at Kim's office, in 6 months, you're going to be cured of whatever is ailing you. I mean, that can happen, right? Some people have a bad bout of depression or anxiety or, some kind of challenge, and they get over it. But for the most part, we learn to live with it. And the best we can do is to go and get the best help that we can get, and to monitor ourselves and keep asking ourselves the question, am I okay?
Right. And Kim, I want to talk to you about reaching out for help, and what does that look like, and where, like we were talking about sharing. How can I share? How can I get out there and share? Right.
I think admitting and being aware of that I'm not okay is the first step. The second one, I think, is to acknowledge to yourself mainly, wow, I don't think I'm okay. And so it literally starts with a thought. It might have even started with a feeling, and that's why as men we don't do as well at getting to the thought. But if we are able to name the feelings and be able to say, I don't feel okay, and then say, I don't think I am okay, and I need to go and at least talk to someone to see if that is indeed true. And so certainly you can often go to your own GP and mention it. You can talk to someone who's safe, possibly someone in your family, but possibly not as well. It might be even more scary to talk to someone, and so you might want the safety of anonymity. And that's the whole point of counseling and therapy, is that it creates a safe place for someone to be able to explore some of these areas that you are safe to know that it's not going to go outside of the office in that sense, and you can just explore that. And so phoning and asking. There's all kinds of individuals from either helplines, certainly psychotherapists or psychologists and social workers. All of those individuals are people that you can reach out to. If you have insurance coverage through work, you can certainly also seek after that. But what is important is that you take the little step. And as the weight loss commercials talks about, if you could have done it yourself, you would have done it already. Very, very true. And
Right.
we need to sometimes face that I guess enough time has gone by that we do need to get some help. And going back to what Michael was saying, I think we owe it to each other to talk more as men. We need more mentorship. We have lost the ability to look to the elders or those who have gone through the fire and speak to the younger generation. And we have lost that, and we need to recover it again, because there's much to learn from that. And so seeking out a mentor, seeking out from AA, a sponsor, those kind of relationships that we need someone above us, beside us, and below us that we're pouring into, the mentorship in all those areas above and beside, that we're our peers, we're helping each other. We need to be good team players.
I was on Joe. I was on a guy's podcast who played major junior hockey, then had a total loss of himself. He was living on the streets in Vancouver, went to jail, was addicted to anything that he could find, and we were talking. And this was a couple of years ago that he kind of found his way back, and now he does a podcast talking about his battles. And I said to him, he goes, some days I don't feel good. And I said, look, here's a simple question. And you can answer it now to me or just answer it to yourself. But if you had to live the rest of your life the way you feel right now, and by right now, I don't mean like this minute, but I mean in general, whether it's this week or this month or just how you are now. If someone said, okay, you're going to live the rest of your life with that, like that, would you be okay with that? And if the answer is yes, then that tells you something. And if the answer is no, then that tells you conclusively you're not okay. And I know for me, if someone would have asked me at different times in my life when I was between treatment, if you would have said, would you be okay to live the rest of your life like that? I would have gone, are you kidding? Not a chance. Not a chance. Like my life right now is on hold because everything is painful. So, would you live this way the rest of your life? I think that's for me at least, it's a really good way to answer the question, am I okay?
Yeah, that would be that's a great way to answer that question. So, I wonder if I'm looking, outside of myself, like when I reach out for help, I really want to make it clear that when we reach out for help, this is certainly the opposite of weakness. This is incredible strength. It's incredible strength to get out of ourselves and ask for help and get in a recovery community and as you say, a sponsor, and have somebody that's kind of been through it and can help me, guide me through it now. And it's like, we lost our son to the disease of addiction, and we can get that more into that in another program. But I'm used to asking for help now, right? There's a group called Bereaved Families of Ontario, Durham Region. My wife and I turned to them, and we found other people who'd gone through similar loss, right? Losing a child and what that's like. And, when you go through it, you wonder if you're ever going to get through it, right? And it's like, it's, a devastating loss, right? And so, but there's people around me who've gone through it, who come through the other side. Well, they haven't come through the other side, but they now live with it, right? They live with that loss, are able to survive, to function and be okay. And so in the beginning, you wonder if that's ever going to be possible, but eventually you come to the realization that I mean, here I am. I've got through it. I've got through my addiction. I've got through, I've got through that. I've got support. I've got so many friends and that smothered us with love, and when we lost Spencer, and I was able to take it in, and because I'm used to now asking for help when I need it, and we help each other. That's what we do, right? We help each other. And the more we see that, but I can't help you if you're not willing to be helped. If you don't reach out and ask for help, I can't help you, right? So we have to be able to reach out and ask for help and take, that monumental step and face that incredible fear and realize that, you know what, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out and ask for help.
Love it. Yeah.
I tell people, okay, you think that you're afraid to be perceived as weak if you come forward and you say, okay, well, I need help. I said, so I'm going to tell you just, my story, and you tell me, do I sound weak? My name is Michael Landsberg. I battled an illness called depression and anxiety. I'm on medication today. I'm not an advocate for medication, but medication was what made me feel somewhat better, not cured, but somewhat better. I understood on a certain date in a certain hotel room in Montreal that I understood why people take their own lives, right? So I understand all of that. And yeah, this is a chronic illness, but I'm not ashamed. I'm not embarrassed, and I'm not weak. Do I sound weak? If I don't sound weak, then why would you sound weak? And sometimes the best way to empower people to go and get help is to tell them your story and to tell it with strength. If you tell your story like, oh, Kim, I don't know why I get like this. I have a great life. I have, a great family. I have, I have so much. Why am I like this? That sounds weak. Like the blaming of ourselves sounds weak. We don't choose this illness. We don't choose addiction. It chooses us. And when you accept that, I think you got a much better chance of coming forward and saying, hey, yeah, you know what? I need help.
I love that. I so respect that, and I think the viewer needs to realize that what you're experiencing is just fear, and we all are afraid of different things, and much of life is how much will we lean into that fear and realize that it's not as scary as we thought. And I encourage you to just push yourself to make that call and ask for help, because it's just fear.
Joe, do you have time for me to tell one brief story here?
Yes, for sure. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're talking about fear, and that show with Stefan Riche. The next day, I got an email from a guy, and there was 22 emails that I got, to be honest, that changed my life. 20 of them were from men, and they all said the same thing: that hearing a couple of guys talk about their mental illness, guys who weren't, failures in life. I mean, Stefan Riche has won 2 Stanley Cups. Guys that have been able to do with their life the things that they wanted to do. That admitting depression was not, a life sentence or a death sentence, has empowered them to reach out to me. So anyway, fast forward 3.5 years later, I get an email from a guy in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. His name is Tyson Williams, and he said, Michael, a couple of years ago when you were on with Stefan Riche, I saw the show and I messaged you. And what you don't know, because I didn't tell you, is that I was in a closet with a belt around my neck, and I was in the process of ending my own life when I heard the computer go. And I thought, okay, well, I better go get it, because I'd written a note to my parents and to my daughter, and I didn't want them showing up. And then I saw that it was you. And we went back and forth 5 times. And each time he said, I returned to finish the job. The last thing I said to him, and I didn't know any of this was going on, right? The last thing I said was, I just thought that I knew he was ashamed to go for help. I knew he saw himself as being, shy and living in a small town, and he was deathly afraid of others finding out. And I said, think about this. What do you have to lose? Like you've said to me, and I didn't know, again, that he was in the process of ending his life, but I knew that he had given up his life to his illness. I said, look, you tell me that every single second of your day is pain. Really, if you go to your family doctor and start the process of trying to find out if there's help, is your life going to be worse because of that? Like, it sounds to me like you're at maximum bad right now. The upside is maybe you get better, but what do you have to lose? And he said, I thought, yeah, you know what? Makes some sense. And he said, here I am, this much time later, and I'm living a life that I never thought I could live. And fast forward now 6 more years, and he asked me to be the best man at his wedding in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And this is a guy that I had only met once in my life, right? And there I was in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, standing at the front of the community center where no Jewish person clearly had ever stood before. And I'm looking down and I'm watching him come towards me. And then, his future wife is there, and he's holding his daughter's hand, the one that he had written the note to. And I can see his parents, and I go, life is weird and sometimes wonderful, and it really just in this area comes down to sharing, because it's contagious.
Right. Let's reach out and let's have allow people in, and let's have those people allow us in. Some final thoughts, Kim?
Incredible conversation, guys. I think we all could talk about this for hours. There is we've just talked about, there's some natural, cultural, systemic challenges that everyone has, but especially men, in terms of talking about when they're struggling, when they're not okay, and possibly even that they are struggling with a mental health, a genetic medical issue that is tough to acknowledge and get some help for. But there is help. The good news is that there is significant help there if you can just reach out and trust someone. It's in relationships. It's in relationships that we change. There's a good reason why we have survived, humans in this world, and that is that we have depended on each other. And as Michael and Joe has said, it's when we connect and engage with other people that we actually it draws the strength out of us. It's not by being alone, it's actually by sharing. And so telling our story is one of those things, and hearing another person's story is what we need to do. And so I encourage you, if you are struggling or know someone struggling, to reach out and get some help, because there is good people out there. There's good help to be had.
When you're in isolation, you think that you're all alone, and you think you're the only one who's going through what you're going through. But believe me, there are a lot of us going through exactly what you're going through, who have gone through what you're going through, are going through it today, and there's a lot of people out there who can help you. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate the conversation.
Oh, I don't get a last
really
word.
awesome.
Okay, we got to go to Kim.
Go
Sure,
ahead.
he went to graduate school. Oh, he's a professional in psychology. Landsberg, what the hell does he know? But okay, fine.
Bayridge
But
Counselling Centers.
I will say this, that what you just said, so many of the things, Joe, to be honest with you, that you said, I have thought, and it was like, oh my gosh, I thought exactly that same thing, but I've never said it. So this has been empowering for me. And what I've come to understand is that loneliness, which we were talking about, is never about the number of people that are around us. It's the number of people who understand us. And if there's one person that understands you, all of a sudden, you're not alone.
You're not alone. You are no longer alone. Hopefully we've been helpful to somebody out there, and I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you, gentlemen, Michael Landsberg and Kim Christink. Awesome conversation. It's been an honor to be part of this, and join us next time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.